Hey everybody, this is Jack at paranormalintelligenceagency.com, coming back to you with yet another deep, dark mystery, this one having to do with unexplained deaths of ufologists. First of all, come by and check out the Paranormal Intelligence Agency website. It's all new and the URL is below in the description. Also, take a look at my book, Paranormal Planet. That link is below. I present my unified field theory of paranormal activity, where I explain that all paranormal activity breaks down into two categories, and then I explain the mechanics of how and why paranormal events actually happen. So today we're going to look at mysterious deaths of ufologists that have occurred over a period of decades now. And I have to ask, with all of this UFO disclosure now taking place from the U.S. military and the U.S. government, is it time for us to go back and re-examine some of these mysterious deaths and determine if there was more to them? When you take a deeper look at this mystery, you realize that there's just something not quite right. There's still too much suspicion raised when it comes to various deaths of UFO investigators. It's really frequent, and there are too many. This has been going on since 1947, and it still does. And it's all from death by gunshot to the head, death by poisoning, death by alleged suicides of all kind, death by strangulation. A few of them had radioactive isotopes injected into them. Some of them had the implantation of deadly viruses implanted into them. And the list really goes on and on. There's a long list of suspicious deaths of UFO investigators. Dr. Johnny Mack being one of them. He was a psychologist at the Harvard School of Psychology, a professor. And he wrote a Pulitzer Prize winning book on alien abduction. And while he was in England speaking at a conference, he was killed by a hit-and-run driver who has never been caught to this day. Investigators like Lloyd Pye, Alistair Beckham, Orang Hollanda, Phil Schneider, Ronald Rummel, Dr. Alan J. Hynek, Danny Casolaro, Dr. Carla Turner, Ron Johnson, Anne Livingston, as well as the deaths of a host of researchers in the past and many more. And it only adds emphasis to a reality with which many of the more aware ufologists are now quite familiar. Not only is UFO research a potentially dangerous area, but the lifespan of the average serious investigator falls far short compared to the national average. And if you investigate this, you will find that many UFO researchers who were working on their research in the 1970s and 1980s all died under some very mysterious circumstances. And many things point towards the idea that they may have been assassinated for their investigations. This is also the conclusion reached by an astronomer and former U.S. government advisor, Timothy Hood. Hood is an interesting guy, and he made this statement at an international conference in Amsterdam. And this conference was dedicated to the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, kind of like SETI here. And I believe the statement that he made is true. But for all the researchers trying to find extraterrestrial life and revealing the truth, it's still unpleasant. Hood's conclusion was prompted by a 30-year study on the topic that he did. And he made the statement, in a relatively short time, 25 people who worked in the space field died from various reasons. When discovered, this tragic phenomenon, seriously believed that it had to do with alien involvement. And according to Timothy Hood, these deaths were not accidental, but were the work of special forces, special services, intelligence services, who were going out and eliminating the experts because they knew too much and they were talking too much. Let's take a look at some of these unusual deaths allegedly done by suicide. One is Captain Holanda from Brazil, and during the months of September through December of 1997, the Brazilian Air Force, under the command of Captain Holanda, was sent to the island of Colares, and they were sent there to investigate a series of incidents in which over 80 people reported being attacked by beams of light from UFOs. And this paralyzed 2 of the people, and it left them with puncture wounds and with burn marks on their skin. The locals were terrified. The investigation was codenamed Operation Saucer. It ended up getting like 15 hours of film. They got 500 photos, hundreds of documents of eyewitness detailed drawings, and they interviewed over 3,000 witnesses. The files were supposed to be classified by the Brazilian government until 1997, and the editors of UFO magazine were allowed partial access at that time. They were also contacted by the then retired Captain Holanda, who gave them a really vivid recollection of the whole series of events. And it wasn't less than, right about 3 months after the interview, he was found dead, hanging by his own belt. Why would somebody commit suicide that long after that incident, found dead after the interview? It's interesting. Another investigator was Ron Rummel. He was found dead in Portland, Oregon park. He had been shot through the mouth and was supposedly holding a gun in his hand. The police labeled this a suicide. And the really sketchy part about it was that they cremated the body the very next day. And they didn't perform an autopsy, and they didn't notify any relatives. He allegedly shot himself in the mouth with a pistol. Friends say that no blood was ever found on the pistol barrel, and the handle of the weapon was free of fingerprints, according to the police investigation. They also, I guess the coroner detected some funny smell in his perspiration, which they couldn't account for. There's a very interesting series of deaths that occurred in Russia at a place known as Sverdlovsk, Russia. And this was the subject matter of a 1998 TNT special, and it was called The Secret KGB UFO Files. And it was hosted by former James Bond actor Roger Moore. The program showed startling filmed segments of an alleged UFO crash that occurred in Sverdlovsk, as well as several minutes of the supposed autopsy of a dead alien. The crash occurred in 1969. I believe from what I've seen that the crash itself was authentic. I'm not sure about the autopsy of the alien. I think that may have been added at some point later to the film. In April and May of 1979, an unusual anthrax epidemic occurred in the same town. And the Soviet officials attributed everything to the consumption of contaminated meat. And U.S. agencies attributed it to the inhalation of spores that were accidentally released at a military microbiology facility located in the same city. Epidemiological data show that most of the victims worked or lived in a narrow zone, and it extended from the military facility to the southern city limit. Farther south, livestock died along the zone's extended access, and many scientists allegedly also died during this outbreak. So the TNT special crew who was filming this special had a really hard time getting in touch with any of the scientists who actually dealt with the craft. It has now been concluded that the escape of an aerosol of anthrax pathogen at that military facility actually caused the outbreak. How convenient is that? We all know about James Forrestal, the U.S. Secretary of Defense, and in May of 1949, he plunged from a window of his Bethesda, Maryland National Naval Medical Center room, and rumors abounded that Forrestal's classified government work gave him unique access to the U.S. government's most guarded UFO secrets, and secrets that Forrestal was intent on disclosing to the world. And he would have had his untimely and very suspicious death not gotten in the way. It is known that James Forrestal kept a lot of personal information in his personal diary. Some of it may have been covering what he knew about UFOs. And shortly after he plunged to his death, his personal diary came up missing. It is highly suspected by ufologists that he was assassinated because he was unstable and about to disclose many secrets that the military-industrial complex wanted to keep secret. Another researcher named Alistair Beckham and his former colleagues are another example. I mean, were these scientists victims of a corrupt defense industry? Have they been espionage pawns? Are the deaths nothing more than an extraordinary coincidence? The next case is just really fascinating. Now, 22 British Space Defense Initiative researchers are all ruled suicide. Now, the Space Defense Initiative is, of course, the other name for Star Wars, and these were British researchers. Now, this list is known as the Sheldon list, and it's from the famous American writer Sidney Sheldon, who came up with this research while he was working on his novel, The End of the World. And I had read that novel, and I remember reading the list, and it really disturbed me. And the list drew attention to a series of mysterious deaths that among these British specialists developing space weapons. One of them was 50-year-old Alistair Beckham, and he was a successful British aerospace projects engineer. His specialty was designing computer software for really sophisticated naval defense systems. And like hundreds of other British scientists, he was working on a pilot program for America's Strategic Defense Initiative, better known as Star Wars. And like at least 21 of his colleagues, he died a bizarre, violent death. Here's a list of just some of these people. Auto accident. Professor Keith Bowden, 45, computer scientist, Essex University. In March 1982, Bowden's car plunged off a bridge into an abandoned rail yard. His death was listed an accident. Missing person. Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Godley, 49, defense expert, head of work study unit at the Royal Military College of Science. Godley disappeared in April of 1983. His father bequeathed him more than $60,000 with the provision that he had to come back from wherever he was and claim it by 1987. He never showed up for that money, and today is presumed dead. Shotgun blast. Roger Hill, 49, radar designer and draftsman. In March 1985, Hill allegedly killed himself with a shotgun at the family home. Death leap. Jonathan Walsh, 29, digital communications expert assigned to British Telecom's secret Martlesham Health Research Facility and to the GEC, which is Marconi. It's a suspicious company. In November 1985, Walsh allegedly fell from his hotel room while working on a British telecom project. In Abidjan, Africa, which is along the Ivory Coast, he expressed a fear for his life shortly before he died, according to friends and family, and the cause of death was never determined. Death leap. Abamal Dajabai, 24, computer software engineer, worked on guidance system for Tigerfish torpedo. Marconi Underwater Systems. In August 1986, Dajabai's crumpled remains were found 240 feet below the Clifton Suspension Bridge in Bristol. The death has not been listed as a suicide. It's listed as unknown. Decapitation. Ashad Sharif, 26, computer analyst, Marconi Defense Systems. In October 1986 in Bristol, Sharif allegedly tied one end of a rope around a tree and the other end around his neck, and then he drove off in his car at a high speed. The verdict, of course, suicide. Suffocation. Richard Pugh, computer consultant for the Ministry of Defense. In January 1987, Pugh was found dead, wrapped head to toe in rope that was tied 4 times around his neck. The coroner listed his death as an accident due to a sexual experiment gone awry. Asphyxiation. John Britton, Ministry of Defense, tank batteries expert, Royal Military College of Science. In January of 1987, Britton was found dead in a parked car in his garage. The engine was still running. Verdict: accidental death. Drug overdose. Victor Moore, 46, design engineer, Marconi Space Systems. In February 1987, Moore was found dead of a drug overdose. His death has been listed as a suicide. Asphyxiation. Peter Peepel, 46, scientist, Royal Military College of Science. In February 1987, Peepel was found dead beneath his car, his face near the tailpipe. in the garage of his Oxfordshire home. The death was due to carbon monoxide poisoning, and although the test showed that the engine had been running only a short time, they have not ruled out foul play in his case. Asphyxiation. Edwin Skills, 43, engineer, Marconi Space Systems. In February 1987, Skills was found dead in his car, a victim of carbon monoxide. And the list seems to go on and on. So we have to ask ourselves, what was going on? What did these people discover that required that all of them be assassinated? Perhaps as UFO disclosure continues down the road, maybe a few years from now, we'll come across some sort of FOIA record, or someone will leak a document talking about involvement in the deaths of these really courageous researchers who fought long and hard to bring all of this knowledge to the public, despite ridicule, despite the fact that they spent all of their time, their resources, their money, and a lot of them paid with their lives. Thanks for being with me today, guys. Join me next time. I will be bringing another deep, dark mystery for you guys. I've got something special next time. And until then,